Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. Today we're taking a thorough look into a question on many investors' minds. Is Affirm Holdings a good time to buy now? Now, this isn't investment advice, obviously. It's more of a comprehensive examination of the sources we've gathered to help you, our listener, form your own informed perspective. If you find this discussion helpful, please remember to subscribe, like, and comment. And hey, if you'd like to support us, maybe consider buying us a coffee. Also, if there's a specific company you want us to analyze next, just leave a comment below.
Affirm. Yeah, it's certainly a prominent player in that buy now, pay later space, the BNPL sector. It's a really fascinating company to look at right now, given everything happening with consumer spending and the whole fintech landscape. So we'll be looking at its financials, market position, future prospects, basically laying out the whole picture based on the info we have.
Okay, let's unpack Affirm's recent performance then. Our sources show some really striking growth numbers. We're talking about them facilitating $36.7 billion in gross merchandise volume for fiscal year 2025. I mean, that's a whopping 38% increase from the previous year.
Huge jump.
Yeah. And on the customer engagement side, active consumers averaged, 5.8 transactions each? With a remarkable 94% of those coming from repeat customers. That seems high.
Extremely high. That's stickiness.
But here's what really caught my eye. They actually achieved GAAP operating income profitability in Q4 of fiscal 2025. Now, for those of us tracking financials, that's a pretty significant turnaround from, previous quarters.
Yeah.
What makes that particular metric, the GAAP operating income, so important? What does this whole picture tell us, really?
Right, that's a fantastic observation. And that Q4 GAAP operating income, it isn't just a number on a page. It's a firm crossing a, let's say, critical financial threshold. It signals to the market that their core business model, despite its high-growth nature, can actually generate operational cash flow. It marks a shift, maybe from being solely a pure growth story to one with a viable path to reach self-sustainability.
But it's operating income, right? Not the final number.
Exactly. It's important to clarify that. This is operating income, meaning before things like non-operating expenses and taxes. Sustained net profitability, the absolute bottom line. That remains a pretty significant hurdle they haven't consistently cleared yet. We'll definitely get to that.
Okay.
But you combine that high repeat customer engagement, 94%, and the strong GMV growth, up 38% to $36.7 billion for the fiscal year, plus quarterly revenue hitting $876 million, up 33% year over year, and a 43% climb in quarterly GMV to $10.4 billion. It really paints a picture of robust operational momentum.
Right.
And placing this in context, it really underscores Affirm's strong competitive position as a leading BNPL platform, certainly in North America. It's bolstered by their data-driven underwriting, built on experience from over 343 million loans issued. And this momentum, it's fueled by key growth levers, expanding merchant integrations, the growing adoption of the Affirm card, and their international expansion efforts.
Okay, so that operational growth, it definitely looks compelling. But our sources also flag some, important aspects of Affirm's deeper financial health, particularly its ongoing path to net profitability, like you mentioned, and how it actually funds its ambitious operations. They rely on a diversified funding approach, using methods like securitizations and warehouse facilities. But there's also this noted concentration risk, reliance on primary originating banks and, I think, a single card issuer.
That's right.
So beyond just the structure of their funding, what's the real picture of their overall stability and the bottom line when we look closer?
Yeah, this really raises an important question about true financial resilience. You mentioned securitizations. That's where they, package up a bunch of their loans and sell them off as bonds to investors to raise capital.
Right.
And warehouse facilities are basically lines of credit, often backed by their loan portfolio, used for short-term funding needs. Now, while these funding channels are diversified, that concentration risk you highlighted, relying heavily on just a few primary banks and that single card issuer, that's crucial.
Why is that so crucial?
Well, it means a disruption with just one of these key partners could have really outsized negative effects on their ability to fund loans. Market rate sensitivity, particularly for those securitization markets, also impacts their financing stability. If rates go up, funding that's more expensive.
Makes sense.
So it's not just the amount of debt, and their total debt-to-equity ratio of 2.49 does suggest substantial leverage.
Yeah, 2.49 is pretty high.
It is, but it's also where that debt comes from and its potential dependencies. That's the vulnerability. And this creates a really interesting dichotomy with that Q4 JAP operating income we just discussed.
How so?
Well, another source we looked at notes a trailing 12-month pre-tax profit margin of negative 31%.
Negative 31%. Wow.
Yeah. And diluted EPS of just 0.01 cents for recent quarters. So this really highlights the conundrum, right? They can achieve operational efficiency in a single quarter, perhaps, but sustain net profitability across the board. That's still an ongoing challenge, all while the enterprise valuation is pegged at, what, $14.34 billion?
$14 billion, yeah. So it's this tension investors have to weigh. Operational progress, but still burning cash overall on a net basis with a big valuation.
Precisely.
So we've explored the impressive growth and the nuances of their financial structure, highlighting that tension between operating profit and net losses. But now let's talk about how the market is actually valuing all of this. Our sources point out that Affirm's trailing 12-month price-to-sales ratio, the PS ratio, comparing market value to revenue, it's significantly higher than the traditional banking sector. We're talking like 6 to 10 times for Affirm versus maybe 1 to 2 times for conventional lenders.
Big difference.
Yeah. And because they don't have consistent positive net income, a traditional PE ratio, price to earnings, isn't really meaningful here. You can't calculate it properly.
Right, it breaks down.
So how do we make sense of this valuation premium? Does the price tag truly reflect this, well, kind of mixed picture?
That's exactly the question, isn't it? And the intriguing part is that Affirm trades at this premium because it's priced on, well, high growth and disruption potential, not traditional banking metrics. It's seen as an innovative fintech aiming to transform payments, and the market is basically paying up for that future potential, for the possibility of grabbing a much larger market share down the line.
So it was a bet on the future.
Absolutely. If you tried a detailed discounted cash flow analysis, a DCF, where you project future earnings and discount them back, it would require making some pretty significant assumptions about future margin expansion and continued high GMV growth.
Which are hard to predict.
Very hard. Now, given that recent move to GAAP operating profitability and the 38% GMV growth, a DCF model could imply substantial upside, theoretically. However, you've got the elevated cost of capital in today's environment, and those execution risks we talked about, like the funding vulnerabilities, those really temper any purely bullish scenario.
Okay.
So fundamentally, the valuation reflects the market's expectation of future potential, rather than current consistent earnings. It's a bet on what a firm could become, not necessarily what it is today, profit-wise.
Right. Okay, looking at recent market action then, Affirm has been, well, pretty volatile. I'm seeing it traded between $77 and $84 recently, with some heightened swings after its Q4 fiscal 25 earnings and also some insider sales.
Volatility is definitely part of the story here.
Technically, the stock is trading above its 50-day and 200-day moving averages, which, often suggests a strong medium-term trend.
Typically, yeah.
But then, the Relative Strength Index, the RSI, that momentum indicator, it recently stretched above 70. Now, that usually suggests the stock's been bought up maybe too quickly and might be due for a short-term pullback. Overbought territory.
Classic overbought signal.
So how do we, as listeners, interpret these mixed technical signals, especially when we factor in the recent news and that insider activity you mentioned?
Yeah, stepping back, the stock's recent moves are definitely tied directly to that Q4 earnings beat. That brought the GAAP operating profitability into focus and pretty predictably generated positive commentary from analysts on the street.
Right. The market liked that operating profit number.
Exactly. That's where much of the recent price action comes from, including, what was it, an almost 11% jump right after earnings?
Something like that, yeah.
However, the insider selling is a really significant counterpoint you brought up. CEO Max Lifchin sold over 167,000 shares in August.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is. And other insiders also offloaded shares around the same time. Now, while these sales were under preset 10b5-1 plans, which are basically automated trading programs set up in advance, technically to avoid accusations of trading on inside info.
Okay, so they weren't necessarily reacting to immediate news.
Technically, no. But the sheer volume of selling is notably elevated. And that creates this fascinating tension for investors, doesn't it? You've got strong earnings news on one hand versus pretty significant insider actions on the other.
I agree. That volume of insider selling, especially during a period of such positive news like that Q4 earnings beat, It feels like a significant countersignal, maybe. Does this not introduce a bit more caution than the market seems to be fully acknowledging right now?
It absolutely raises a question mark, and it's definitely something longer-term investors need to consider carefully. While the optics can be tricky, and it doesn't necessarily mean a lack of confidence from insiders. I mean, people sell for many reasons, but it certainly adds another layer, another complexity to the story. Now, on the more positive news front, Affirm has strengthened its footing recently. They renewed a pretty critical multi-year exclusive partnership with Boot Barn, and they expanded their collaboration with Google Pay for seamless payment integration right into the Chrome browser, offering more flexible payment options there.
That sounds positive for adoption.
It contributes to positive sentiment, sure. And you saw JP Morgan, for instance, they adjusted their price target up from $69 to $84, keeping an overweight rating, citing positive spending trends.
$84. Okay.
So you have these powerful kind of opposing forces at play right now. Good news, operational wins, but also insider selling and valuation concerns.
Okay. So with these opposing forces clearly in mind, looking ahead,
Yeah.
what could be the short-term and, I guess, long-term catalyst for a firm? And maybe more importantly, on the flip side, what are the key risks that investors absolutely need to be aware of?
Right. This brings us to a really critical look at the future path. Short term, we're definitely watching the next earnings report, which is due in November 2025. That'll be key. Also, potential product launches, like maybe further expansion of the Affirm card, and any new major merchant partnerships could certainly drive stock volatility.
Makes sense.
And of course, ongoing macroeconomic data, consumer spending trends, credit quality reports that will directly impact market sentiment towards BNPL in general, and Affirm specifically. Long-term success in international expansion is a big one. Continued growth of their merchant network is crucial. And critically, regulatory clarity, especially in the US and the EU regarding how fintech and BNPL will be regulated going forward, that's paramount.
The regulatory uncertainty seems like a big cloud.
It really is. Broader BNPL adoption trends and any efficiency gains they can make in their underwriting and funding operations could also be transformative tailwinds over, multiple years.
Okay, those are the potential upsides. What about the risks?
The risks are substantial, and investors need to be clear-eyed about them. Stock-specific risks. We've mentioned that concentration on major bank partners and that single card issuer. That's a significant dependency, a potential vulnerability. Funding and liquidity sensitivity to broader macro conditions are also critical. Securitization markets can dry up or become very expensive quickly in times of stress. Regulatory and litigation risks seem to be expanding. Increasing legislative scrutiny of BNPL globally was cited as a material risk factor in their latest 10K filing.
So they acknowledge it directly.
They have to. And loan credit quality is a constant concern. If the macroeconomic environment deteriorates significantly, that could put pressure on repayment rates and lead to higher losses.
Which hits the bottom line hard.
Directly. Then you have market and sector risks. High sensitivity to rising interest rates affects both their funding costs and potentially consumer demand for credit. Consumer debt cycles are always a factor. That ongoing regulatory overhang on the whole BNPL business model is significant. And of course, evolving competition. It's coming from both other fintech disruptors and traditional banks who are trying to get into this space. It's a very crowded and dynamic field.
Okay, so after examining Affirm from all these angles, the growth, that kind of nuanced path to profitability, the financial health questions, the high valuation, market sentiment, and those significant risks, what's the overall picture for someone considering an investment right now?
Our sources seem to suggest that, yes, Affirm is delivering rapid gross merchandise, volume growth, record engagement, and just hit that GAAP operating profitability milestone. There are structural tailwinds in the broader BNPL industry, too.
Sure.
However, you've got the elevated valuation, those ongoing, quite large insider sales, the concentration risks in their funding, and a highly uncertain regulatory environment. Those are pretty significant headwinds. Definitely headwinds.
Near-term technicals show strong momentum, but also those signals of being overbought, plus some unusual volatility may be linked to those insider sales. So the positive long-term outlook seems clearly tempered by these medium-term execution and macro risks. The takeaway seems to be it's maybe best suited for tactical short-term trading, given the strong momentum and potential catalysts, but only for investors who are really able to actively manage significant risk and volatility. It certainly doesn't sound like a low-risk, long-term core holding right now.
I think that's a fair summary based on the sources. The key takeaway for you, the listener, is that Affirm is really a company at an interesting, maybe even critical inflection point. It's path to sustained net profitability, getting beyond just that 1/4 of GAAP operating income, and its ability to navigate this complex and evolving regulatory landscape. Those will be absolutely critical to watch. Ultimately, for longer-term investors, the advice seems to be monitor carefully for durable, consistent bottom-line profitability and much clearer regulatory pathways before making a definitive large-scale move. Think of it like this. A firm has shown they can sprint, achieve rapid growth. Now they need to prove they can run a marathon without tripping over regulatory hurdles or funding potholes.
Sustainability, not just speed.
Exactly. It's about sustainability as much as speed. And maybe for you, the listener, here's a provocative thought to consider. In this rapidly evolving fintech landscape, is disruptive growth really enough on its own? Or must it eventually be matched by consistent, deep-seated profitability and proven regulatory stability to truly be considered a long-term winner?
That is a truly insightful question to ponder. Thank you for joining us for this really thorough discussion on Affirm holdings. We certainly hope this analysis helps you navigate your own investment decisions with a bit more clarity. Until next time.